Xander. My wrist buzzed again, warning me of violence in the throne room. Yeah, my generals were pissed, but I didn't give a shit. Because I'd fucking done it. I'd captured the Pure. I'd give her back, eventually, but for now she belonged to me. A little scratch on her leg wasn't enough to disqualify her from ascending, as much as the angels like to terrify their little humans of believing otherwise. I knew, because I'd studied every Pure candidate in known history, and more than a few had scars and physical blemishes. The girl hadn't seemed to know that, though, which didn't surprise me. There was a lot about her own world that I fully intended to educate her about before I gave her back to her precious Zion. Because I hadn't lied. I didn't wish to start a war, but I needed to take an opportunity when it presented itself. There was something special about this female, a quality that made my cock hard and my heart race. Nothing had made me feel like that in centuries, and I wouldn't be letting her go any time soon while I enjoyed every minute of it. When I wasn't beating some sense into my generals. If they ever talked to me like she had, without fear of consequences or any sense of self-preservation, I would kill them all in a heartbeat. Yet, I found her naivete endearing, and she at least knew her own value, so perhaps she wasn't as naive as she seemed. Approaching the throne room, I threw the doors open with both hands and stormed in. Silence engulfed the large space as the fighting stopped. Frost and Mirai had their teeth bared and were red with blood, with matching gashes lining their bodies, all while Mirai's poor human assistant lingered in the shadows, likely just trying to stay alive. Liara held Bane down with her graceful thighs, crushing his skull, while Hellion stood by and watched, clearly amused, although all mirth fled from his gaze when he spotted me. I strolled to my throne and took my seat, sinking into it and getting comfortable. Judging by how they were going at it, we'd be here for a while. Liara, I said, when Bane's breath began to slow. She'd kill him at this rate. She smirked, then twisted, releasing him with a violent snap. He gasped for breath, scrambling out from underneath her, his face red and his eyes bloodshot. "What the fuck did you think you were doing?" he demanded, earning a gasp from the room. No one talked to the Fey King like that and survived. I studied him, wondering if he really had a death wish. While he'd been wise not to re-engage a fight with Liara, starting one with me was not a smart move. "Would you like to try that again?" I suggested. After my audience with the Pure, my mood had improved, but I still had my limits. "I said," Bane began, marching toward my throne, looking me straight in the eye, "what the fuck was that shit you just pulled out there?" Hot embers built in my chest, running down my right arm as my fingers ignited. Shadows uncurled at my feet, a warning that the power of the Fey King would be unleashed, and when that happened I had little control over it. Bane positively foamed at the mouth, not seeming to care that his death was imminent. "Do you have any idea how many Fey I lost during your little stunt?" he demanded, as a vein in his neck throbbed. "Or human crop? I'm the first line of defense when the angels get pissed off. Or did you forget that I have lived as your shield for all these years? Where's the gratitude? This is how you repay your generals for their sacrifice? Stealing some girl so you can get your dick hard again?" "Enough," I said, my voice rolling through the room like thunder. The other generals watched me, even Liara, and their shadows moved away from me, not toward me. I raised a brow. "What say the rest of you, Do you agree with Bane? Come on now, speak freely." Frost stepped forward, one of the more logical and grounded of my generals.
"We barely survived the last war, sire,"
she said, her words careful.
"While you are our king, we are your generals. We can't help you if we don't know your plan.
If there is a plan, Bane grumbled, swiping his hand through his hair. I didn't need to provide the details to them, not yet, and Bane was not putting me in the mood to share. You know what I deem you need to know. As my generals, your job is to protect the court, obey your king, and in return I grant you land and resources, as well as radiation-free crop. I held up my fingers, demonstrating my flame that even burned away the wretched angelic toxin. Without me, there would be no land to rule. Bane growled, baring his teeth as he braved one step closer to my throne, putting him just out of arm's reach. Don't give us that speech. The truth of the matter is that you suffer your ennui. I see how nothing interests you anymore. Your eyes are as dead as your heart. If you are doomed to madness, don't take us down with you, Xander. Give up the crown. Let one of us rule. I leaned forward. If you think you can rule in my place, then come take it. Bane paused and swallowed hard before closing the distance between us. The platform left nowhere for him to stand other than at my feet, but he stood tall and proud. He glanced over his shoulder, finding the generals watching to see what I was going to do next. Don't look at them, I said, snapping my fingers, the motion sending embers to the ground. You want the throne? You want to have all the power? Come on, then. He turned back to me, straightening when he spotted the flames that rolled over my fingertips. I let the power stream through me unimpeded. My eyes burned as they did when I risked losing control of my magic, but in this case control wasn't what I needed. The fear registering in Bane's gaze, that was what fueled me, kept me alive as 600 years on this world weighed me down. Bane clenched his jaw with determination as his skin shimmered with his own magic, making his eyes turn black. You've lost your fucking mind, he snarled, before he shot in and wrapped his fingers around my throat. I could only laugh at his pitiful attack. No Fae could stand against me, not after the power I had absorbed as king. My court and my tower fueled my magic, with my throne as the conduit. The fool had attacked me in the one place where I thrived. I released a torrent of power, sweeping molten gold streaking through his veins. He roared as he burned from the inside, pain lighting up his eyes. He retaliated with darkness and chaos, his unique power that made him useful on Chicago Zion's border to disorient my light-afflicted enemies, but it wouldn't work on me. Darkness was my home. Chaos was my soul. Bane roared as the heat grew, burning like a violent storm that engulfed us both. I grinned as I ran my fingers through his hair, yanking him down so I could whisper in his ear. Never start a fight you can't win, I said, before I returned the favor, wrapping my fingers around his throat to burn my way through his flesh. His screams cut short when I slid through to his spine, popping off the end with a slick snap. The fires took their fill, licking greedily at the new flesh as I kicked, sending the rest of Bane's body tumbling onto the floor, his head still in my hand. A clean kill. No blood, given my powers tended to cauterize the wounds. Liara stepped away, her chin tucked as she finally had some sense to realize I might be pissed off. Frost, Mirai, and Hellion might not have approved of the execution, but they had heard him challenge my throne. That gave me the right to remove the contender, a justified kill. Does anyone else still question my right to rule? I asked, sweeping my gaze around the room. My generals patiently stared at me. No one stupid enough to challenge me now. I'd barely broken a sweat. I could kill them all if I really wanted to, but my plan only called for Bane's death. As orchestrated, Liara had tormented him for weeks, pushing him toward the edge so that when his forces were inevitably decimated, while I took the pure out from underneath the angels' noses, he would cross a line. Yes, it was all working out fabulously. It somehow bored me to always be successful in my endeavors, yet the female waiting in my quarters filled me with anticipation of my reward for this plan of mine. My generals narrowed their eyes, their silence acting as confirmation that I had the floor. "Good," I said, tucking Bane's head against my side. I still had work to do before I could get back to my little, almost angel human. My generals were submitting to me. They were listening. And I felt good. For the first time in a century, I felt alive. How long had it been since violence excited me? I'd started to think I didn't know how it felt anymore. But this was power. This was what it felt like to have the authority, to have my subjects know it and fear me. And it was all because of the pure, I was sure. She was here. I'd been in contact with her, and for the first time my ennui had retreated far enough that I even enjoyed killing again. Something was happening because of her, something I needed more of. It was settled then. She wasn't going anywhere.